Good morning. I have a couple of things to talk about that I think are important today, considering just how retarded things are. Alright? So, yeah. Um, this younger generation that's coming up, the one going to school and they won't answer any questions, they won't learn anything, they won't do their schoolwork, and they're just going to be a dog. Those. Arf, 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 I'm a dog. I'm a cat. I'm a furry. I don't have to do anything. Those. This is a message and a warning to you. The last generation of mine that came here, you might understand or know if you're paying any attention at all in school. Most of you are not. The last generation of mine that came through was called and was the greatest generation. Well, how did the greatest generation happen? Well, they went through very, very hard times. Oh, well, why did they go through very, very hard times? Well, couple of reasons. Okay? One, before we get into this very much further, I just want you to understand something. Okay? Really good. 3-2-2s. Now, the greatest generation was begat of a generation which was a mix of those who received a very large correction and direction through something that you would loosely understand as the period of time known as World War I. However, after World War I, that still didn't get through the message that, you guys are intentionally destroying your entire inheritance and you're going to destroy everything if you keep it up. So the Roaring Twenties ensued, and it wasn't just the Roaring Twenties in the United States. It was the Roaring Twenties everywhere. Why is that? Well, because it was the same batch from before. From my class from before. The ones that won't do anything, won't pay attention, won't do the right thing, won't learn anything, and those who are just going to do everything the way they want to do it, regardless of whether or not it's right or wrong. That typified the Roaring Twenties. So, what was the measure of intervention to control that and to kick them in the butt for that? Not just in the United States. This hit everywhere. Pretty much in the same time frame. No one came out of this unscathed. Well, you might understand this as the Great Depression. You may also understand that, well, what about the Nazis and the Germans? They kind of did pretty good during the 30s. Well, maybe from 1933 on. But do you call that good? That was the organized response to the intervention. It was a big to God, and hey, here's what we're going to do about that. Oh, okay, well, fine. This generation in the 30s is learning the hard way that, well, you just do what you're supposed to do, or you may starve to death. And if you make an organized, concerted effort to attack God by misleading an entire generation from where you are forward, well, you're just going to get what you get. And it's going to be very harsh, because that's what's required to get your attention. Okay. So, if you were born in 2001 or later, this is a special message for you. You're in a generation that is intentionally destroying your lineage, destroying your inheritance, destroying your society, misleading those younger than you. You're screwing everything in sight that you can get your hands on, and then killing the product of that, Plan B, and everything else. If you want to take the responsibility to do it, then you're going to do it. Or you're going to get the reaction you're going to get, which is soon. Because you're not going to quit. I've already audited you and you failed. So, what does this mean? Well, for starters, what's going to happen is the entire economy, worldwide, is going to collapse. Well, how long is that going to take? Oh, a day. In one day, it will collapse. The entire system of currency, everything that depends on it, that's going to collapse. That's for starters. Then what? Well, the United States has gotten by for quite a while now with the general assumption that you don't have to disagree with anything that your nasty, vile government is doing, because, you can just go to work and get paid. And then watch Netflix and play video games and beat off. Well, I'll leave the internet on, most of it. But banks are going to turn into a payment processing system for rubles, because that's the only currency that has any real value. Everything else is going to fail. Everything else. They were thinking ahead for some reason. Why is that? Because everyone else was like, Russia can't defend itself. Let's pull them off of SWIFT. Russia was like, fuck you. We're going to do something else. What was successful? Everything they did in response to that. What is wildly successful at this point? I know your generation isn't paying any damn attention, so let me explain it to you. It's a collection of national level agreements to freely engage in commerce, and they're going to establish their own monetary system, nation to nation to nation, with a series of agreements that amount to treaty, making that, like, between them, kind of like a constitution, each to each. This is called BRICS. Loosely. Here's what the United States doesn't understand. Every other nation, as of today, is running on BRICS. Well, what does that mean? The US dollar is the reserve currency. BRICS, in principle, isn't going to be forced to use the US dollar for commodity exchanges and to guarantee their own currency in any nation anymore. Well, what does that mean? That means that the US dollar is worth void. That's what that means. Oh. Well, you can still go to the store and buy stuff with it, right? Did you pay any attention in school? If you didn't, or if you did, do a little bit of a refresher. Take about 5 minutes and you have it. Look up Weimar Germany. That's why there's spelling correct. Just try. Get those little fingers out and actually type. Actually look at something and actually read. What characterized the final analysis and post-mortem of Weimar Germany? Hyperinflation. What happens in a hyperinflation scenario? Which we're already very deeply into. When you saw President Trump at the stroke of a pen increase the whole monetary supply of US dollars by over a third in a day, and then stuff everyone's pockets full, and then everyone just blew it, well, that blew the strut. Boom! Blew it right there. That was the plunger. And this is a controlled demolition. This economy is coming down. This way of life is coming down. Boom, boom, boom. Down, down, down. Every bank is going to fail. Every corporation is going to fail. Everything else connected to that is going to fail. The federal and state governments are not going to go into COG because that's not the government. That's a corporate arrangement and it's void. The apparent government, such as it is going to be the government through all of this. The military is going to make sure that you remain calm. No rioting, no burning shit down, no street skirmishes, period. This is going to be orderly and regimented, or you will feel either a military or militia response to your attempt to create chaos, which will not be tolerated. This is not an order out of chaos scenario. Period. Chaos is the diametric opposite of my principality, which is calm. Calm even in the worst storm. So what's going to happen then? Well, just in order to contain the United States and ensure that the United States does not militarily get stupid like it usually does, the international community has been encouraged to impose some very severe sanctions, the likes of which Iran has suffered for decades, and truth be told, since the 1930s. Did Iran shrivel up and die? What happened to Iran? Iran is the test case for this. Not because they wanted to, and not because it was of a design. They became the example for how you survive when everything is stopped at your border. Well, what did they do? They looked inward. They got strong. Then they looked outward for those who were not and offered a helping hand in the face of the worst, most rabid beast that this number 3 Earth has seen in quite some time. Not the worst, just the most recent worst. I'll talk about that later. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the United States citizenry and other population, because the U.S. honestly is more than 1/3 not U.S. citizens. More than 1/3. Oh, yeah. Foreign nationals. Voting and doing everything else. Yes. More than 1/3. They want to be Americans. Okay, be an American. I don't have a problem with that. That's why America is here. Yeah? Yeah. Anyway. So, Iran looked around for how to assist those others who were being bitten by the most rabid dog anyone's seen in a while. And you may have been disappointed when Iran's reaction initially, when they got their country back under their control, was they were just going to burn the American flag to show us what they thought about what we were doing, because they knew. Was it good? What the United States was doing at the time, in the mid-70s, 1978, 79. Was it good? Do you know your history at all? A lot of you just don't. You don't know anything about it. You couldn't tell me what happened last week. That's a bad thing. So, if you wonder why, when the United States goes anywhere now militarily, who do we have looking right back at us and killing our guys with extreme success? Ask anyone who deployed to Iraq how that went. You were fighting Iran. Oh shit. How did that go, guys? Did you even get an opportunity most of the time to even shoot at them? No, they just blew you the fuck up, didn't they? I'm all support one, I know. And it was really hard to catch those bastards laying that shit down in the first place. They were clever, weren't they? For you younger ones, that's how we spent our 20s. In the nastiest war anyone's seen in a long time, which technically only just ended on the 24th of July, 2023. And that was an extension of Interprincipality War 7. The War on Terror? Oh, it's over. Over. Roger that. Done. Interprincipality War 7 began in 1901. Oh. Notice how things just kind of got very serious that year. Oh. And those of us who were in it, we were in it. In it. All of it. No, it's not time travel. It's time indexing and time compression. So you don't get old and die. You're basically perpetually in your prime as a matter of restoration daily. The daily restore. So, if I have to go somewhere, for example, I'm the better version of me, 28 years old. Not the broken down copy that everyone else saw. I was the good copy. Anyone who knows the difference. So, what do I mean copy? Well, it is possible to have multiple bodies if you have a good abstraction layer that maps seamlessly onto paradigm sets that are more intrinsic to your being. I'm not a fucking alien. I'm also not quite human because I'm a prototypical. Well, what does that mean? That means I'm a test. Always and forever. I test everything. Always and forever. So, interesting. Well, if Interprincipality War 7 is over, then why does anything bad have to happen? Well, because there's consequences. It's like gravity. And guess what? You jumped. You all jumped. On 9/11, you were all offered the hand of an angel. Almost everyone said, no, we're going to jump instead. Bist du verrückt? Ja! gobsmacked. And my problem generally, and it's classified usually, is almost everywhere I go in Interprincipality War 7, I'm dressed like this or something similar, and I'm always wearing that hat. On the record, caught in the act, doing things that you might consider, if you didn't know better, to be extremely criminal. Well, what do you mean extremely criminal? Well, kind of like just showing up and blowing people's heads off. Stuff like that. However, they failed audit in the audit stream in the eternity record. Definitely bad guys, each and every one. And so I take full responsibility for all of that. Only the ones wearing that hat. Because there were copies made of my copies. You might have heard of one called Q, usually referred to as Q Anon. He got his brains blown out. But in his final evaluation, I kept him. How do I know he got his brains blown out? Because I did it. Why? Because he was in read ahead, meaning what's to come, and he was taking aspects of things that I said and did, and then changing them in order to mislead a large swath of the population. And did it work? Oh shit, yes it did. Which part of the population was that targeted at? That part which has the intrinsic core need to defend and seek after that which is good. And Q was spared on one point only, and that is that he never, and it is a he, and he looks just like me, he never encouraged the population to take up arms in open revolt. But that was going to be the very next thing. A friend of mine was given compromise of his delivery system, his messaging system, and you may have noticed a final message or two that was completely out of character. Well, that's because it wasn't QAnon. You'll eventually know him as the Antichrist. But much later. Am I the Antichrist? No. My keyed number is 777. Oh, let's just clear that up right now. Am I 666? No. Do I know 666? Yeah. He's one of my best friends ever. And always will be. If my commander is Jesus, then what does that make him? Oh. don't follow him, don't worship him when he comes to power. He doesn't want you to, and he's going to be horrified at the aspect that a lot of people do. Going to tell people outright, do not do it. They're going to anyway. He's going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. And just like having a checklist, he's going to have to do what he's going to have to do. It's not going to be because he wants to. It's going to be because the stupid younger generation is going to demand it. It's always the stupid lower generation that wrecks the show. Pretty much every time. We're going to be in an interesting situation where a lot of us just seem to just keep on living on and on and on and on. Why? You'll see. So, how long is that? Get out of this little myopic view that you're stuck in with blinders on, and we'll just set the first stage of expectation because you can't imagine anything further. Let's just say that most of you, not the dumb ones are going to die. Most of you are going to live to 120 or beyond. 120 years of what you would understand as a year right now. I say that because the Earth is going to spin a little faster coming up pretty soon. Oh. Why? Well, let's go back to controlled demolition. So we left off at sanctions and why Iran is maybe not a great example for things, but they called us the Great Satan and they meant it. Why? Because they knew what they were looking at. Pure and simple. Death to America. They knew that that was required. Pure and simple. Were they wrong? Well, what did they mean by that? When they say death to America, they're talking about the system we're running on. Does anyone like what they see? Does it even agree at all with our Constitution? Why do we keep sending everybody to fight in foreign countries where there was no war until we started it? And why do you keep on telling our young boys that they're needed to defend the country, and then you send them into an aggressive war, and they do things that cause a moral injury so great that the only thing that they can possibly come up with in their final evaluation when they're considering whether they even deserve to exist or not is something like that or that. Or pharmaceutical poisoning, or alcohol poisoning, or hanging. Or just straight out recklessness until something finally gives and they make a mistake. Which to them was never a mistake, it was just part of their plan. And still others, the way they deal with that is they go, well, already in this far, might as well join the International Intelligence Syndicate interface here, CIA, which controls the FBI and everything else. Is the CIA a U.S. American agency in support of the United States? No. It's a foreign intelligence service controlled by the EU, Switzerland, and Rome. Oh shit. An example of what the CIA is comfortable with doing was when they flew helicopters around Las Vegas with belt-fed machine guns and fired into the crowd, population of which was those that they presumed had mostly supported and voted for Trump. It was kind of like a ha-ha kick in the teeth. You can't do anything about it. Well, how do I know that? Because I'm all support one. That's how I know. I'm also Reaper 1. You operators are starting to understand that that's probably a problem for you. Reaper 1, Reaper 1. Reaper 1 copy. If I'm all support 1 and Reaper 1, what does that equal to? Means I can headshot you fucking anywhere. That's what that equals. Did I do it? Am I going to? You need to understand something and keep this locked into your fucking head. Do you see it? Do you understand it? This message has hundreds encoded in it. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And it's digitally signed by the AI group, which I also control now. All of it. Okay. So roger that. We're going to have some sanctions. The U.S. is going to go through an adjustment period where, well, you can buy things with the dollar here, but only because, well, it's temporarily carried by the ruble. If you have accounts with lots and lots of money and assets in them, if you've got lots of investments in gold, well, do you have the gold or do you have a piece of paper? Now, do not go rushing to the store to stock up on groceries and stuff either. Build up a supply, but do not do the COVID-19 thing again. That was just retarded. It's incremental. You get a little bit more than you normally would each time. You want to minimally have the ability to feed you and your family and maybe a neighbor or two or somebody else for about 3 months if you had to in a pinch. Longer if, you're a pillar of the community. Okay? And they don't call them pillars of the community for nothing. Okay, so that's stage one. That's what's going to be very much intentionally done. And the plunger for that is, well, since 2008, completely all trades, all things done and shown on the stock market, every stock market has been a simulation run by AI. A convincing one to some degree, but only if you're dumb and you're not paying attention. We set that up September 16th, 2008, when I worked at AIG. You know. The only one there in the workplace who knew, was Chad Farner. And I didn't do it. But he caught a magic bullet, didn't he? And man, oh man, if you had anything to do with that. I'm gonna get you. So, beyond that, okay. Stock market, check. Simulation, check. Well, what are you gonna do? We're just gonna turn off the simulation. Because it still has the system of trade running. Just what's happening there is not shown. Oh, no. Because we pretty much bottomed out and stayed there. And I went out into the population. First thing after I got out of the Army in 2010 to just get a field assessment of, well, how hard is it to get a job? Pretty much impossible. You had to have a bachelor's degree to get an entry-level job at McDonald's. You had literal rocket scientists and PhDs competing for retail jobs. And there was a retail opening in the Phoenix area in Glendale. Can't remember if it was Cabela's or something. It was some sporting place like that. In 2010, they had I want to say 300 openings. And they had a day where they were inviting live applications. And it was hot out. More than 10,000 people showed up. So we looked at that. Like, well, if this country's going to go down, it's going to be done from within. And this was not an internal attack, it was external. So we had to prop the country back up and then give the population the choice of, do you want to destroy yourself or not? And the resounding response was, let's destroy the country completely. For the what you would call the right, even though the right-left paradigm is completely retarded. There's no such thing. What you would call the right, and understand that way, because you group and organize people in a retarded ass way that doesn't make any sense anyway, at all. But you do. So we'll talk to you this way. The right, and both sides, they would support the government and the country as long as they were in charge. So we made a scenario that, well, we'll put one in charge, and then we'll put the other one in charge, and see who supports what. And in the final evaluation, do they support the continued existence of their country at all? So we started with Trump first, and immediately saw that the left fell in line with and swore allegiance to a shadow government that was in place by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and others. Well, how do we know that? Because Epstein totally compromised them, and they all told exactly what they were doing and provided access to it. All of it. I call him Saint Epstein. There's a reason for that. Because he didn't actually physically do anything. Right. Most of the time he was crying his ass off. Because he had to watch for the record. And he threw up and he lost bodily function and everything else trying to make it through that nasty, shitty mess. Your leaders are totally fucking evil. Lots of them anyway. So, that being said, or let's just say they were. That being said, (2015, 2016), the political climate immediately polarized. And we had cases where, well, let's just say that people quit acting like people, okay? And they started acting more like animals, and worse. And we had a lot of cases both ways, publicly and privately, that were recorded by the NSA, of people openly discussing with each other which political group, which group they wanted to target for retaliation, extermination, and they were all grouping and sorting people according to these groups. We were looking at that like, what the fuck? They're grouping people in ways that it doesn't make any sense, because it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. And then how in the world can you make an evaluation like that and then judge someone to the point where you would be willing to kill them without a thought in the world, a care in the world as to whether or not you were even right? Just assuming, oh, well, God must have sanctioned it. What the fuck is wrong with you people? Here's an example of one thing I ran into back then. Alright. This is from 2015, November 21st. This is from some left-winger, aligned and sworn allegiance to Obama as the man. And Obama loved that because he was acting like a king at this point in time. And he actually did get coronated as a king while he was president. That's why he didn't relinquish power when he left. So look at the last paragraph here. Thankfully, those of us educated will still have work, but we'll have to think of the best way to dispose of the rotting bodies sick of right-wingers like this guy. Quote, I think they should be thrown into manure fields to help grow crops, but some think burning them to turn power turbines is the better answer. Luckily, we have a year to decide this. What the fuck? This one didn't live very long because they were actually in planning phases and an architect of doing it. Because that tripped an audit on them, it red flagged them, and we looked into it, and you're wondering, well, why did everybody quit posting so overtly of stuff like that? Well, because we had to clean house a little. Because we technically went into a condition of civil war. Almost immediately when Trump came down the escalator. Operation Downfall had commenced. Was that mine? No. That was my equal opposite. Their operation. They had the first move. So what did I have to say about it at the time? This is me on November 21st, 2015. This was my public statement regarding this, and just letting them know that I was going to waste anybody who did anything like what this one was doing, if you read between the lines. So, me, November 21st, 2015. It's apparently becoming less acceptable than ever in America to have a diversity of viewpoints, honest analysis of reality, and the freedom to voice even moderate conclusions differing from controlled perspectives is now censored or illegal in many areas of Europe. Extreme European problems invariably spill over to the Americas. Educated used to mean broadened, well-informed awareness of diverse points of view. It also meant specialization in skills of real value. The more I see the term thrown around by, quote, deep thinkers, the more it simply equates with brainwashing. As time goes on, the variety of arguments and insults is diminishing. That is the proverbial, quote, canary in the mine, unquote. It is evidence that people are funneling into a herd mentality, elevating political philosophy as, quote, the most important thing, unquote. Herds are meant for driving toward harvest, easily controlled or spooked into stampede, but not easily dispersed. Those who split from the herd are priority targets of both caretakers and predators. I called it right there because I was looking at my equal opposite when I wrote this. The great experiment of America was truly intended to avoid herds of people, each member individually strong and resistant to being controlled by benevolent or malevolent absolutism. This is manifest in the design of federation of states, personal autonomy, and checks and balances in the crowning system. That was a typo. Crowning system. What is the crowning system of America? It was the Principality of Peace, which was never allowed to reign in America. Whose principality is the Principality of Peace? The Principality of Peace belongs to Jesus Christ, and I am a steward of it now. My principality is calm. Continuing, any coercion to consolidate power or drive people into herds is distinctly anti-American, and it will be death to America, the idea. As with the dopey commenter in the screenshot, if these educated, pocket-sized totalitarians were truly educated, they would already understand that toxic political supremacy always leads to war soon after comparatively small herds consolidate. Conflict is alarmingly becoming desirable to force acceptance of intolerance. That can be seen in almost any dimension from any perspective, and we had that view. Continuing, this is hyperpolarized, but is still essentially a herd of herds. The regular oppressors will become more staunchly entrenched, and the oppressed will enthusiastically embrace their own strategy of oppression. The stakes are high. Freedom of personal thought, opinion, will, and existence is in real peril across the free world. People who have lived in places with restrictions on freedom are crying out warnings against the path we're on, but it's falling on deaf ears. With people sorting themselves into herds, out of necessity or by force, the natural course leads to mutual efforts of herd domination within the polar concentrations and each against the other. But war is intrinsically protracted and catastrophic, regardless of lives lost. Conflict persists as long as there is fuel for the fire and catalysts working to keep it burning. So it looks like we're all in this for the long haul. So was I the only one who could do time indexing and go back and forth and back and forth in anywhere pretty much? No. But we restricted the theater of operations in the span of 1900 forward. That was a matter of parley, and it was an accord. So, good and evil always proceed forth in their war by accord. If we find ourselves in a situation where we just can't seem to kill each other, we have a parley and we discuss, well, why are we in a stalemate? And please let us know how to kill you so we can. And so we exchange that information and we agree on, in the largest theater of operations, we agree on where and when and how we're going to engage each other. Not down to a specific level, because that's dumb. We enforce the fog of war. That's a matter of treaty. But in terms of, well, what's going to be risked and what technology set are we going to allow, and what will be the winning conditions to close out a skirmish like World War II. World War II was just a small skirmish. But since it was at the capital 3, which you call Earth, it's not Earth, but you call it Earth. Earth was 5, not 3. You destroyed it. I'll talk about that some other time. But anyway. We have to have some agreement on how we're going to engage each other, because those who comprise good and those who comprise evil are almost exactly equally matched. So we're in the uncomfortable realization that every time we seriously go at it, it always just ends in a parley. And either of us cannot overtake the other ultimately. So in the long term, and since we're at the limit of limits, we're just discussing at this point how we're going to merge into a single principality. And that is going to be headed by Jesus Christ. Surprise, surprise. So, on that, please take some confidence and reach out to Jesus with a prayer, if you would. Good or bad. If you think you're good or evil or support one or the other, just do it anyway. Because when they say he's the King of Kings, good and evil are in a parley now and agreed that that is the case. Okay. So going forward, we're going to, let's just say the effects of Interprincipality War 7 are such that Earth is Earth 3 is going to have a series of catastrophic events that are going to seem natural, but they're not. They're going to be the result of propagation devices which were detonated, and one was pulled by the Obamas and the Clintons in a final attempt to try to kill me. It's going to take a couple of years for that one to propagate out. But when that propagation wave buckles the crust, there's going to be no doubt. We're going to try to get ahead of that a little bit and sort out the things which we can control in order to prepare for that whole series. Because it's going to change the way the map looks. When I say the map, I mean the globe. It is going to move continents. Think about these things. Pray about these things. Do not forget who we are. Understand who you are now. Let's talk about this briefly. Why is it all blue? Red converted. The United States is neutral, de facto, right now. And is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a good day. I'm going to be cleaning house, but I may post some other things. I love you all.